Spiritual awakening is often spoken about as though it's all love and light, all alignment, all expansion, crystals, angels, fairies, and peace. More intuition, more synchronicity, more connection, more meaning. And while those things, or some of those things, can absolutely be part of spiritual awakening, there's another side of the journey that often isn't spoken about enough. The confusing side, the uncomfortable side, the messy side, the side that can feel disorienting, lonely, and even destabilising. In this episode, I want to speak with you honestly about the dark side of spiritual awakening. Not to create fear, but to bring a more grounded understanding to a process that can be deeply transformative and, at times, deeply challenging. Welcome back to Intuition on Tap with me, Heidi, your host. So, one of the first things that many people experience during spiritual awakening is a shift in identity. The way you used to see yourself may no longer fit. The things that once felt meaningful may begin to feel flat, misaligned, or even strangely empty. This can result in relationships changing, maybe your goals, your dreams, your wishes and your wants change, and more importantly, your values can also begin to change. And while that sounds beautiful in theory, in real life it can feel incredibly unsettling. There can be a lot of actual grief in spiritual awakening. Because sometimes awakening asks you to let go of who you've been before you fully understand who you are becoming. This can and does affect relationships, careers, friendships, and structures that once felt secure and trustworthy now maybe feel unstable and unfamiliar. As more people become spiritually aware, they often also become more energetically sensitive. What does that mean? It means you become more aware of energy within you and around you. You become more aware of the emotional dynamics, again, within you and around you. More aware of what feels off, inauthentic, or misaligned. But without grounding in your physical body, that heightened sensitivity can absolutely become overwhelming because some people begin to absorb too much. And if you're not doing your inner work and you're absorbing too much, that can create a sense of overwhelm. Some people struggle to distinguish intuition from anxiety. And I know I speak a lot about this in different episodes of my podcasts and videos that I put out, because it's just so important. Some people feel exhausted by environments that never used to bother them. Think social occasions, think going into supermarkets or shopping malls or concerts or sporting events. Maybe in the past, that wasn't really a problem for you, but now your sensitivity is increasing. You're kind of feeling everything all at once. And unfortunately, what a lot of people do is they just start to avoid. And this is one of the reasons that spiritual development has to include nervous system support. Because awakening is not just energetic, it's also physiological, emotional, and mental. Another dark side of spiritual awakening is the temptation to use spirituality to avoid what still needs to be felt. This is sometimes called spiritual bypassing. I'm sure you've heard the term before, but it can sound like, I just need to stay high vibe. I shouldn't feel this because it's bad. Everything happens for a reason, so I'll just transcend it. Or, I've outgrown anger, grief, or fear. That doesn't resonate with me anymore. And my personal absolute least favorite, everything outside of you is a reflection of what lives within you. Yuck. This stance can be so harmful to people who are deeply compassionate and caring. And it also often leads to taking responsibility for other people's abusive and shitty behavior. They think, or they are told, if I'm clear and high vibe enough, and if I do enough work on myself, people won't harm me. And if they do, then it's about me. Then I need to do more work on myself. I am here to tell you that other people's bad behavior is never your fault, nor your responsibility to own, to understand, or to process. This is exactly how people with bad intentions and or personality disorders can manipulate and harm spiritually open people. If you hear so-called light workers or healers talk like this, run fast and run far away. Because at the end of the day, real growth doesn't happen by bypassing your humanity, your feelings, your trauma, or your limitations. Spirituality is not meant to disconnect you from your emotions or your shadow work. It's meant to help you meet yourself more honestly, more deeply, and more openly. And this is exactly where discernment becomes essential. Because during awakening, people often become more open, right? Obviously, that's the whole intention of it. You become more open to guidance. You're more open to teachers and self-proclaimed gurus and masters. You're more open to signs, messages, and possibilities. But openness without discernment can really be risky because not every spiritual teacher is grounded. Put it this way. If your spiritual teacher talks about manifesting your dream life or meeting your soulmate, but they can't pay their rent and all they do is complain about their crazy ex-partner, then I would encourage you to be very careful about what they're selling you. This is not because wealth is the most important. It's because it's a reflection of the work that they have not done on themselves. So I have no problem with manifestation. In fact, I teach it myself. That's not the point. The point is beware of people who are selling you something that they have not mastered themselves. And you also need to remember that not every message is true for you. Not every intuitive impression needs to be acted on immediately. Because awakening asks you to develop not only your sensitivity, but again, you have to also develop your discernment. Your power is not in blindly following what sounds spiritual or what the latest trend is on spiritual TikTok or spiritual Instagram. There are plenty of tricksters in this space, both in human form and in non-human form. And they love nothing more than to wrap themselves up in the premise or idea of love and light, all the while manipulating, controlling, and causing you harm. Your power is in learning how to stay connected to your own truth and to be able to say no as a complete sentence and walk away when something does not feel right. And this is the most important part, even if everyone else says differently. You must develop and work on the relationship with yourself. This is paramount. Because awakening can feel lonely. Another part people don't always talk about is that it is a lonely process, or can feel like that, because you might begin to feel disconnected from conversations, relationships, or environments that once felt familiar. You may find that your inner world is changing fast, faster than the people around you can understand, and maybe faster than they're actually interested in understanding. This can create a period of in-betweenness where you're no longer who you were, but you may not yet feel fully anchored in who you're becoming. And that space in the middle can feel really very deeply isolating, and you can feel very vulnerable. But this doesn't mean that something has gone wrong. In fact, it often means something real is reorganizing within you, and the old is required to make way for the new. There is a caveat to this, however. If you are being asked to limit or cut contact with your loved ones or friends because they, quote, don't get it, or because, quote, they are low vibe and aren't evolved enough, or maybe you're told that you can't progress with non-believers in your life by a spiritual teacher or someone who presents themselves as being spiritually evolved, I encourage you to be very, very careful. This is absolutely a red flag for cult behavior, where the cult members, the cult leader, or the spiritual teacher or guru will attempt to separate you from your support systems. So you become more vulnerable, and therefore you're more easily pliable and manipulated. Just because someone says they're spiritual does not mean they are. And this is coming back to discernment. This is coming back to knowing yourself. And if you're getting that funny feeling, regardless of what anybody else is saying about that person, listen to yourself, right? Listen to yourself. Because awakening is not always peaceful, one of the biggest misconceptions is that spiritual awakening is that you should always feel peaceful, gentle, joyful, open, calm, at, one with everything. But awakening can also stir things up. And in fact, if you're doing it, dare I say, properly, it's like a non-negotiable. Spiritual awakening stirs shit up. That's just how it works. And it can surface old wounds, hidden fears, unprocessed grief and trauma. It can uncover unhealthy relationship patterns, and it certainly will uncover long-term nervous system dysregulation. Sometimes awakening illuminates what's been buried for a very, very long time. And if we're going to go fully woo, let's look at this lifetime and other lifetimes. Just because you're not having access to, I guess, that physical experience or life right in this moment does not mean that that trauma has not been imprinted on you and, you've not carried it through lifetime to lifetime. Think the witch's wound. I might do another episode just solely on that. It's really important to understand that it feels messy, uncomfortable, confusing before it feels meaningful. And this is why awakening is not simply about becoming more spiritual or more able to read a tarot card or, tune in with your crystals. It's about becoming more whole. I'm sure you've heard the saying, the only way out is through. And this is no more relevant than when you are spiritually evolving and energetically growing. I have always taught, and I've taught spirituality and spiritual development for more than 20 years. What I know to be true is you cannot grow and expand without looking at, taking responsibility for, and processing your shadow and your embedded pain. If you attempt to do that, I'm here to tell you it's going to end up in a hot mess. And that's not, again, to create fear. That's not a threat. That's just an observation of what I know happens if you don't walk hand in hand with your shadow and your light and you don't process them at the same time, it creates an imbalance and it just adds to more nervous system dysregulation. I do not recommend. So, what actually supports this process? What actually helps? Well, what does help is grounding. And I know that you've heard every person and their dog say, get more grounded, get more grounded. But what does that actually mean? Well, it simply means just becoming more present in your physical body and with the physical world. It does not mean, shooting off to the stars every minute that you get, becoming disembodied, becoming dysregulated. Leaving is not becoming more spiritual. Becoming more present in your physical body, in the physical world, that will help you every single time. What also helps is nervous system regulation and emotional honesty. You really need to be truthful with yourself because you're the only one that can, inhibit your own growth. If you're not emotionally honest with yourself, then how will you be honest spiritually when you're evolving? How will your discernment grow and develop unless you're really, truly honest with yourself? Again, back to the discernment. You have to have it about who and what you give your power to. This is so, so important. What helps is also allowing your spiritual path to be human, embodied, real, raw, messy, and sometimes uncomfortable. An authentic spiritual awakening does not always look like how it's portrayed on Instagram. You know what I mean? Filled with crystals and incense and green smoothies. You need to be mindful of falling into the trap of performative spirituality without any depth, because this ain't it. And as I said before, what I know to be true is you will get your butt kicked, not through punishment or karma, but through lessons not being learned or integrated. You can't take, the fast track. You can't skip parts that you don't like or feel uncomfortable just because you want, the instant or fast gratification. This is not how this process works. Some more supportive practices can also include spending time in nature. Use the natural world. Use Mother Nature to help balance the elements in your body. We all contain every single element within our human physical form. So get out there and calibrate what is within you by using nature. If you're near water, if you're near mountains, if you can go and hug a tree, if you can lie down on the grass, if you can stand in the sun, stand in the rain as well. And if, for those of you who live in a big city, even find a park in the middle of the city. Normally there is some form of nature that you can have access to. Another supportive practice is slowing down overstimulation. This is so important. So maybe stop doom scrolling for 4 hours a day. That's going to help, definitely. Also, comparing yourself to others' process and to other people's development, to other people's journeys. This is not helpful, and it can actually really set you back. I also encourage journaling what you're actually feeling without editing or trying to seem like you have it all together. Again, think performative spirituality. Just dump it all. Dump it into the book, messy, without punctuation or really caring about the sentence structure. Just get it out. Just dump it into the pages. And, I also encourage people not necessarily to reread it. Just get it out, what you're actually feeling. That can help with processing. I also really recommend that you seek grounded support. So, look at your teachers and your healers and your therapists. I'm not saying that everybody has to have it all together to be able to help other people, because absolutely that is not correct. I truly believe if we're still breathing, we still have some work to do. So it's not about finding the person that's portraying this air of perfection. And in fact, I would not be aligned with someone like that. What I would encourage you to do is look for someone who's honest, look for someone who is authentic, look for someone who is doing their own work, and they will be able to help you with more grounded support. Also, building practices that reconnect you to your body. This can include movement. I've already mentioned spending time in nature, maybe some gentle yoga, walking, anything, stretching, massages, anything that you can do to reconnect yourself down into your physical body is going to help. Another supportive practice is when you're building your discernment, include caution when opening your energy fields to others. Just because somebody says they have the next new best way to connect in with your so-called spiritual guidance or angels or what have you, it doesn't feel right to you, then you don't need to do it. This is all about discernment, all right? So you are allowed to say no. You are allowed to say, not for me, no thank you. And in fact, that is one of the most important lessons when you are spiritually evolving. And also taking your time with big spiritual conclusions or decisions. You don't need to have everything figured out all at once. You don't have to, come to that aha moment to be able to feel like you're spiritually evolving and awakening. This is like a progressive experience. It's not a finish line where you get to and you're like, oh, well, great. I'm all done now. I've got nothing else to learn. I've not yet met anyone that is alive and living in the physical world that has accomplished that. Awakening doesn't need to be rushed. It needs to be integrated. So just to tie this all together, I want you to remember that the dark side of spiritual awakening isn't a sign that you're failing or you're doing something wrong. It's often a sign that something deeper is being revealed. Awakening can be beautiful, expansive, and meaningful, but it can also be confronting, disorienting, and deeply human. And really, that's the point. And the more honestly we speak about that, the more supported people can feel in their own process and in their own mess. If you're on a spiritual path and some parts of it have felt messy, lonely, or more intense than expected, you're absolutely not alone. Real awakening is not about escaping yourself or being only love and light. It's about learning how to meet yourself more truthfully, more authentically, more compassionately, super, super important, and more fully. And that kind of awakening is powerful and truly authentic. If this episode resonated with you, I would love for you to like and subscribe and maybe share it with someone who might need to hear this as well. And if you're ready to go deeper, you can explore the Empath AF community or maybe spend time with the Oracle AI, which is a regulation tool that I've created that you can take with you wherever you go. Think of having a mini Heidi in your pocket that you can ask any question you like. Some people might think that's a good thing, some people might not. Both the Oracle AI and Empath AF are designed to help you integrate spiritual, energetic, and nervous system work into your daily life in a way that actually creates change. And as always, remember, regulation first, intuition follows. And I will see you in the next